Okay, my love, so we're gonna take this back to basics and pretend that you know absolutely nothing about acrylic nails. Now, in order to get started, you're gonna need two components. You of course need the acrylic powder, which is a polymer, but you're also gonna need the monomer, which is a liquid. The monomer reacts with the powder to create a strong nail extension that air dries and can last up to 3 weeks. Acrylic powders are typically available in different colors, so clear is just the acrylic powder itself, and then you have your sheer colors, cover colors, color powders, and then also glitter powders. Clear is used for almost every single set and is going to have the strongest adhesion, so I actually have a great pro tip to share with you guys later, so make sure you stay tuned. Okay, now that you know what acrylic is, let's go over what kind of products you're going to need to get started. Now, you don't need a lot to get started with acrylic, but there are a few key products, so let's go over that really quick. First, you will need your acrylic powder, colored acrylic powder, monomer, which will react with the powder, an acrylic brush, and for beginners, I would recommend going with a size between 12 and 14, and as you get more experienced, you can move on to either a smaller or bigger brush, whatever you're comfortable with. Also, a quick side note, the reason I recommend starting with both color and clear acrylic is because they both have different consistencies, so it's really important that you get used to working with both of them. Now onto the items that aren't so essential to get started, but you will definitely need if you want to do an acrylic set from start to finish. You will need a dehydrator, a primer, nail tips and nail glue if you're looking to do an extension, nail files, buffer blocks, and a top coat. The top coat could either be gel or lacquer, but I prefer to use gel top coats just because I feel like they give me the most shine. Now that you know what products you will need, let's go over how to choose the right and legal products. And yes, there are some illegal products out there. First, let's go over how to choose the right monomer. It's important to know that not all acrylic powders and monomers are created equal. I know that cheaper products can be appealing at the beginning, but it's really important that you focus on getting high quality and legal products. First, let's start with the monomer. So when you're choosing a monomer, there are some things that you want to keep in mind. First is you never, ever want to use a monomer that includes either MMA or HEMA in its ingredient list. These ingredients have been banned by the FDA for causing irritation, burning, and damage to the nail bed, so stay away from any monomer that has MMA or HEMA. Nails done with MMA or HEMA are going to be really heavy, they're not going to be flexible, and they're going to be really difficult to remove. Plus, they're going to yellow your nail bed over time, so stay away from them altogether. The second thing to keep in mind is to always use a monomer that has a purple tint, like the one I have here. And the reason why I make this a rule is because if you use a clear monomer, it will work perfectly fine to build your nail, but you are going to get that yellowing on the nail, especially on top of white and pastel colors. The purple monomer is non-yellowing and it works the best, so whenever you're looking to buy a product, keep in mind no MMA, no HEMA, and yes to EMA. Second, let's go over how to choose the right acrylic powder. The second most important product you will use is acrylic powder, so you also want to make sure that you pick the right one. I know that there are a lot of acrylic powders out there, but let me show you exactly what to look for. You want powders that are highly pigmented and have even color coverage, but you also want the consistency to be really smooth and buttery instead of chalky and crumbly, if that makes sense. The one on the left is a cheaper alternative that I got on Amazon, and you can see when I apply it, it's really chalky, it seems to be marbling, so the color is not even, and it's sticking to my brush, so it's going to be really hard to work with. Now let me show you a good acrylic powder. This is from the Curious Guy All-in-One collection, and you can see that the color coverage is consistent. The formula is super smooth, and it's also really easy for me to place my bead down without getting the product stuck onto my brush. This right here is exactly why you want to use high quality products, especially when you're learning. You should only be focused on actually learning the skill and not trying to make bad product work for you. I know there was a lot of information, so let's just do a really quick summary. First, what is acrylic? So acrylic is a powder that bonds with monomer to create a strong and lightweight nail extension. What do I need to get started? Start with clear acrylic, color acrylic, monomer, and an acrylic brush. Once you're ready to create a full set, then you're going to need a dehydrator, a primer, nail tips and nail glue, and then any additional colors or glitter acrylics that you may want. Now, how do you choose the right monomer? So you want to avoid MMA and HEMA monomers and make sure that you choose EMA and make sure that it also has a purple tint to avoid the yellowing. When it comes to choosing the right acrylic powder, you want to look for a smooth and buttery consistency and avoid cheap, runny, or chalky powders. Now that we know the basics, what we need, and how to choose the right products, it's time to learn about the actual application. Make sure that your monomer stays clean throughout the entire process, so if it starts to get a little bit thick, gummy, or cloudy, it's time to change it. So first things first, let's go over the liquid to monomer ratio and the different type of beads that you're gonna get. One thing that I find common with beginners is that they always use a lot more monomer than they really need. So this is why I recommend you start with a smaller brush, but it's also something to keep in mind as you begin to practice. If you have too much monomer on your brush, you will have a really runny and watery bead, just like this one that I have here. And you can see I can't even place this on a nail because 1, it's dripping, but 2, it's gonna flood the cuticle and the sides of the nail, and it's not gonna build any structure whatsoever. Now, if you don't have enough monomer on your brush, your bead will be too dry and look super powdery like this one that I have right here. And when you go to place it on the nail, you can see it's pretty much stuck to the brush and it's not letting go. So the right liquid to powder ratio is super important, and this is the first thing that you want to master when you're learning how to do acrylic. Now, because that's something that you can't really measure, it's something more that you have to keep practicing and just feel it out. You are going to have to practice a lot and end up with 100 beads before you can be consistent and perfect it, but once you get it down, application will be so much faster and easier. So here's what I have found that works for me. I dip my brush into the monomer and I wipe it against my dappen dish about half of the way. Then I dip into my acrylic at about a 45-degree angle. Now you don't want to go in like this or straight in like this. So wet your brush, and at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to tap the brush into the powder for 1, 2, 3, and then flip it over. And once it's glossy like this, then it's good to go. So what exactly makes for the perfect bead? The perfect bead looks like a perfect sphere. It's glossy all around, and it also sticks to the brush, just enough to stay in place, but not a lot that you're struggling to place it onto the nail. Acrylic beads come in all sizes, so you can have big beads, little beads, medium beads. It all depends just on how comfortable you are and what works best for you. Regardless of the size, your bead should always look glossy and have that perfect liquid to powder ratio that we talked about. Let me show you my trick to getting the perfect bead every single time. So for a large bead, I like to wipe the side of my brush against the dappen dish about 1/4 of the way. This will drain just enough liquid to make sure that I don't have a really runny bead. And then I'm going to tap 1, 2, 3, flip it, and then just watch it get glossy. For a medium-sized bead, I wipe the side of my brush about half of the way, and again, I just tap it 1, 2, 3, and there you go. It's perfect and glossy. For a small bead, I wipe almost like 75% of the side of my brush against the dappen dish, and I keep the liquid on the tip of my brush so that I can pick it up without it being too dry. I don't want the monomer to have to make its way down to the tip of the brush. I just want it to be concentrated there already. And then I'm going to tap 1, 2, 3 again, and there it is. Another perfect bead. Now that you know the basics of acrylic application, which is the liquid to powder ratio and the perfect bead, now you're ready to get started on building a nail. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to do a full set from start to finish. Plus, I'll be sharing 2 techniques that are a game changer for beginners and will cut down the time it takes you to build the perfect nail.